Hey everyone, today we will be doing a video about Dave Chappelle's latest special, the controversy around it, and why you don't really need to listen to and engage with these types of transphobic medias. Throughout this video, I'm going to label Chappelle's special as transphobic, and I feel it would at least be responsible to quickly clarify my word choice. Chappelle's special was complicated, and there wasn't necessarily a reason to believe that it intended to cause any harm to the trans community, and there wasn't any reason to consider that it was fueled by deliberate hate of trans people. However, the special certainly did cause harm to trans people. The Chappelle special played into a lot of harmful caricatures of trans people. It platformed a lot of transphobic groups and ideas. It spread a lot of misinformation. And the core justification for Dave Chappelle's comments intrinsically linked transness with whiteness, which is incredibly harmful to people of intersectional experience. As many others have said, Dave Chapelle really isn't any different than the average cis guy who's working through his biases, but he's doing so on a public stage, and doing so on a public stage has a lot of consequences. There's a lot of other videos that do a much better job at addressing the content of Dave Chappelle's special than I would ever care to do. I've linked two videos in the description by Finn and Jessie Gender, and they do an excellent job at sort of dissecting the actual content of the special. What I would much rather talk about is why you don't need to engage with transphobic content like this in the first place. First of all, I think it's very important to note that this type of controversy benefits the creator, and it makes transphobia profitable. Watching this special through Netflix only pushes up engagement, and it shows to Netflix that platforming this type of content doesn't have any consequences to it. It also plays into the algorithm of Netflix. So the more people that view this, the more people that Netflix is going to push this special to. Transphobia has also been proven to be a very profitable strategy for creators. In the case of Chappelle, it puts his special and his name all over the media. It obviously attracts transphobes who are interested in this type of media and want to support it, but it also brings out trans people, and to a lesser extent allies, who feel they've got an obligation to view it, to be informed and be able to engage in these sort of online discussions, to hear out gray cases of transphobia, or for any other reason. But finally, it also brings out a lot of cis people who aren't informed on trans issues at all and see these sorts of controversies and discussions and think that engaging with this media is a good way to be informed. Or perhaps they're just curious of why people are upset on it. Aside from like Twitter backlash, transphobic creators really are only incentivized to reproduce more transphobic media. J.K. Rowling's transphobic book Troubled Blood was the top-selling book that she wrote under her pen name. It was the 5th book in the series, but it sold over double the copies as the 4th book in the first week. This means that there were more people that have never read the series but bought the book because of the transphobic scandal than people that have read the series. Hence, transphobia sold more books than the actual story did. When transphobia is so profitable like this, there's no reason for creators to stop. Many conservative YouTube channels have been exposed for not believing the things they say, but they say them regardless because anti-queer content is very profitable. Constantly surrounding yourself with transphobic media while also living through transphobia in your daily life is also very unhealthy. Life as a marginalized person is extremely taxing, and it's healthy to take breaks from the systems that oppress you. Being constantly reminded of trivial debates among TERFs is not healthy. I myself used to surround myself in transphobic media all the time, from more traditional conservatives such as like PragerU to more far-right conservatives such as Rebel Media, and even just a whole bunch of sensational and niche corners of the internet. I still can't fully articulate why I did it. There were several excuses I made. I would say that I was making fun of it, but I rarely ever enjoyed my time engaging with that type of content. I'd also tell myself that I was educating myself against the opposition, but I don't think that's true either because so much of it was just repetitive. And it would make the same points over and over again, and often didn't have any rational discussion to begin with. I think a large part of it was actually to validate and hear those horrible things about myself that I still subconsciously believed. I felt inhuman, I felt disgusting, and a lot of these videos validated those emotions, even though the way they did was very, very hurtful to me. The more far out and extreme content that just said horrible things bluntly is what ended up drawing me in the most at the end. I remember rewatching a DJ Vlad interview with Daylight where he would proudly discuss his plans to shoot and murder his hypothetical child if they came out as trans. I think a lot of instances of engaging with this type of transphobic content is self-harm, even in transphobia's more palatable and nuanced forms. For me, the more palatable transphobia was largely a gateway to the more harmful content. It gradually led me down the route of accepting more and more harmful content and hearing more and more harmful things about myself said more bluntly or aggressively or whatever else. Consuming transphobic content like this justified my fears of not being able to transition, and it reinforced a lot of unhealthy internalized transphobia that I wasn't able to work through when I continued to consume this type of content. This isn't a case of being sensitive either. It's a case of a clearly unhealthy environment. Engaging with this type of content just hurt my well-being, and it made me a worse person for myself and for others. Finally, I think it's important to note that engaging with this type of transphobic content isn't really productive. Ourselves as trans people often think that we need to inform ourselves and engage with every piece of transphobic content that crosses over into the mainstream. We need to be able to debate our existence with every cis person who questions who we really are. And since those conversations include misinformed articulations of current events and the transphobic media that does cross its way into the mainstream, we need to watch that transphobic media so we can engage back in these conversations. This is especially true for the many of us who are content creators, where extremely visible online, and we're expected to have the utmost authority on every situation that involves trans people, and we're expected to always be informed on every instance and nuance of it. But really, how many times do you need to expose yourself to the same transphobic arguments? There were no new arguments in Chappelle's special, and there were no new arguments in J.K. Rowling's transphobic essay. All of these arguments I've heard numerous times before. Listening to and engaging with their content did nothing to benefit my understanding. Trans people also really don't have an obligation to memorize every transphobic event, caricature, and argument and be able to discuss it with every single person that questions you and has this sense of entitlement that you should explain things and inform them. Or better yet, every transphobe who tries to inform you on trans current events. Being marginalized is exceptionally emotionally taxing, but we don't need to spend hours of our week engaging with transphobes online. It's perfectly okay to just be a trans person who's living in the world and doesn't spend countless hours researching the history of your own oppression. And even if you're a content creator, it's very much okay to skip out on discussing these events. It's all right to be a trans person and represent the trans community, or even just represent yourself and not engage with every single event that goes on. Engaging in these specific discussions of transphobic celebrities doesn't really benefit trans liberation. It takes the conversation away from real issues that matter to trans people and sucks it into these trivial arguments that random, uninformed celebrities make. It fuels more trolls, and it just pushes media attention onto the very content that we're trying to discredit. When you're put in these sorts of conversations, I find it much more productive to discuss housing discrimination, healthcare discrimination, employment discrimination, or these real issues that affect us, not these hypothetical arguments that TERFs make online. This isn't at all to say that you can't watch Dave Chapelle's special. It's just to say that we need to reflect on and be more aware of the media we consume, why we consume it, and what the effects of consuming this type of media really are. I would especially love to hear your feedback on this video, primarily what your thoughts on it are and what your experience with consuming transphobic media is. Was it especially healthy for you? Did you get sucked into unhealthy sections? Do you find it productive in any way? I really hope you enjoyed this video or found it informative. I certainly enjoyed making it. I'd certainly love to have you follow along, and I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you later.